My wife has chosen to leave the home with my 18-month-old child without any explanation and against my wishes. Her safety here is guaranteed. She has ample provision and is well accommodated. What is the legal ruling regarding this? And what do you advise I do as a husband?
So again, she's disobedient by leaving the house without a real reason. So the most you can do in this case scenario here is admonish and give them wa'ad. But the Quran commands us to get, in this case scenario, when this woman is known as Nashiza. Nashiza is a woman who does not fulfill the rights of the husband. In this case scenario, members of a household are brought forth and members of the household of the man in order to resolve the issue. And this is when these issues become unresolvable, they lead to talaq. So the talaq actually occurs because the issue cannot be fixed.
My wife visits her parents and spends
Weeks and months at their house. I am very unhappy and find this too much. What is the legal ruling regarding this?
So the woman is not permitted to do that. It's haram for her to do that except with the husband's permission. She cannot just go to her parents' home without the permission of the husband. And she needs to take permission even staying in her parents' home. But in some cases, you may have cases where the man is cheating. So the man is cheating on the wife, and then the wife leaves. So some of these men are tricky as well. They don't tell you both scenarios. So some men, they come up to the imam, they'll mention, my wife is doing this. But they won't tell you that, yes, I was also doing this. And that is why my wife is doing this. So sometimes they just want the answer one way so they can utilize that. So when you deal with these issues, you need to get the whole story out. So in some cases, for instance, a man, he may have a girlfriend on the side, which is haram, or an undercover wife, or he does something which harms the woman, and the woman leaves. So it's not always as easy as my wife has just left me. Sometimes there are reasons why the wife has actually left. So we need to determine sometimes why the woman has left. But if she has left without cause, explain something to me. Why would a woman leave the house of the husband if she was comfortable, more comfort than her parents' home? There would be something. Meaning if the man was providing her happiness, comfort, she would never leave his house. But there is something as to why that woman is leaving. So unless she's totally evil, as some men attempt to paint the women, so there is always two sides to the story.
If a potential woman I am looking to marry works as a doctor, what recommendation do you have in balancing work and household responsibilities like cooking, cleaning between the couple? Could it ever work, or is it best to avoid these prospects altogether? Maybe he's not a doctor, that's why.
So I would advise that he marry someone of a similar kind of background, unless he's able to make it work.
Ruling or opinion on marrying after haram relations, like marrying a girlfriend.
So someone who's doing haram with a woman, he must marry her. Meaning, if she's not married, he must marry her and stop doing haram. I'll give you an example of this. A family came to see me. Of course, no one knows who I'm referring to. The young man had impregnated the woman. He had impregnated a non-Muslim woman. The parents wanted this man to abandon the non-Muslim woman, Christian woman. So that would mean that they abandoned their own grandchild. When they came to me, I carried out a nikah between the young man and the woman. Now that child has grown up as a Muslim. So she remained Christian, the woman, but the child has grown up as a Muslim. So these are the irresponsible type of parents we have in our community. They know their son is doing zina. They not only make them abandon the child, they do not do nikah of the young man. So if there is zina going on between two people, nikah should be carried out straight away.
My parents are getting old and live in another country with no one to take care of them. Does my husband have the right to not let me visit them to take care of them? They live in another country.
If they have no one else to look after them, he must permit her to go and look after the parents. Oh, he must allow her to do that if they have no one else to look after them.
Please talk about the
The
effects
effects
of
of
pornography
pornography
and
and
why
why
it
it
should
should
be
be avoided
avoided
at
at all
all
costs
costs
before
before
and
and
after
after
marriage.
marriage.
This
This
is
is
one
one
of
of
the
the
biggest
biggest
struggles
struggles
for
for
the
the
youth
youth
today,
today,
which
which
is
is
not
not
talked
talked
about
about
enough.
enough.
Statistics
Statistics
show
show
99%
99%
of
of
young
young
boys are
boys are
now
now
exposed to it.
exposed to it.
So people have to be realistic. If they are not marrying young men off at a young age, in legal age, the young men are not getting married, they will be doing haram. So the bad effects of looking at haram would be, number one, they have high expectations of how a woman should be. Now, what that leads to is that they have specific ideas of what beauty is. A man who doesn't look at haram will be satisfied with an average looking woman, because that is the tabi'ah, the nature of being a man. But someone who looks at so much haram, he will become picky and choosy regarding the type of woman he marries. Secondly, they will not be able to perform. So these men are unable to satisfy their wives. And remember earlier I mentioned second marriages. These second marriage heroes, they are the men who can't satisfy the first wife. So when they are unable to satisfy the first wife may not be as interactive with them in the bedroom as much as they want. So what do? They resort to a second wife, thinking that the second wife will fulfill them. What ends up happening? They do not fulfill the needs of the first wife, they do not fulfill the needs of the second wife because of the harmful effects of what they have been watching.
Yes, Bachara. I want to marry, but I'm still studying. I can't stop thinking about marriage. I have no income as as a student to marry some. Should I marry someone? What would you recommend? Should I or not?
I would tell him to get married. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated in a hadith that women bring amwal, they bring the wealth. When a person gets married, he will get wealthy. Secondly, the talibul ilm, if he's studying Sharia, the talibul ilm, when he marries with the correct intention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will sustain him and supply his sustenance for him. He will avoid haram also. So students of knowledge should get and must get married young. They should not delay their marriage.
I intended to marry a pious woman just for the sake of Allah and His Rasul, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not because of her beauty, wealth, lineage, or status. Now the concern is, I know I know few of such pious women via social media or in person, but I can't approach them out of haya, mashallah. I can't even talk to their parents as I don't know them, nor do I have contact with them. So what would be the halal approach in modern times to find a pious spouse?
So this young man seems like these incels, these people who just observe people's Facebook accounts and go on social media and observe how women are. He should be inquiring in real life in his locality, in his local area, ask his mother to find him a suitable spouse, ask people around him rather than observing Facebook accounts. How can you tell someone's pious on a Facebook account or on a social media account? So this incel issue of young men sitting in the internet, alone in their room on the internet, and then coming out with these scenarios is something that should be avoided.
Is the daughter-in-law obliged to inform the mother-in-law whenever she leaves the house to go somewhere with her husband and include all the details about where they are going, what they are doing?
I think the questioner knows the answer to that, but they are looking for me to say that so they can utilize that as a clip, taking this entire lecture out of context. Meaning, if you listen to the entire lecture, you'll get the wholesome picture. I've said very clearly that the daughter-in-law is not under the subjugation of the mother-in-law. The son must have birrul walidain, but is not obliged to obey parents when it harms him. So again, it comes to give and take.
Is the husband allowed to refuse intimacy with the wife?
No. So the husband who refuses intimacy with his wife, he violates her rights and is sinful with Allah. He is sinful with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He must be intimate with the minimum every 4 days. Minimum.
Is the daughter-in-law obliged to do all the chores for her in-laws?
Again, we know the answer. The daughter-in-law is not obliged to do the work for her in-laws. We know this. But because of the South Asian culture intertwined with these marriages, the marriages do not work out. So they lead to divorce. They lead to disputation. So people have to be realistic. They cannot change the South Asian culture. Look how long I've been attempting to counter the fact that South Asians throw so much rubbish on the roads will never change. I can campaign for 100 years. India will still be the biggest toilet on earth. So similarly, in this case, the in-law culture will never change. So they have to be realistic. What is the realism? Realism is that while the situation stands in this way, you have to give and take. If you cannot give and take, then move out. That's fine. But if you can give and take, then make the marriage work. With this daughter-in-law, mother-in-law, so much of the Bollywood culture, Bollywood movies and programs are based upon this storyline. So young women are programmed from a young age to have this rift with the mother-in-law and the mother-in-law with the daughter-in-law. And the strange thing is, the daughter-in-law will despise her mother-in-law. All her life, she will mention the bad traits of her mother-in-law. When she becomes a mother-in-law, she behaves the way her mother-in-law behaved towards her daughter-in-law. So it's a cycle that continues.
My wife swears at me in front of my children and is very abusive towards me. What is the best way to handle this?
The best way of handling this is firstly, manly characteristics. Manly characteristics do not mean you beat a woman. Any man who beats a woman, these men who beat women, they cannot fight outside. Generally, they cannot fight outside. And you will find them to be very cowardly outside. So beating a woman is not manly. Secondly, raising your voice to a woman is not manly also. It's how a man behaves in terms of as I said, if he's placing smiles on his wife's face, on his children's face, when he enters the home, the children are happy to see him. If the man was like that, he would not face abuse. Now, if the woman is still demented, then the Quran gives us guidelines of avoiding sleeping with her for 3 days. You cannot exceed 3 days. That should affect her, that the husband is refusing to share the bed with me for 3 days. That is the guidelines given by Al-Quran Al-Kareem. The strike is mentioned in the Quran. I'm mentioning this, but the strike is mentioned as a last resort, as غير مبرح, non-harmful strike. You cannot do the strike in this day and age. Why? Because the men are not the Sahaba alayhim ridwan. The men today, they do not know what that entails. They end up becoming abusers. So the strike should not be done. Meaning there is a strike mentioned in the Quran. The man is permitted to carry out one strike on the woman as a last resort. But in this day and age, that should not be done. So if the woman is shouting and abusing, there are reasons. She either has emotional issues. She's going through hormonal issues. The man needs to recognize that. She's probably stressed out with the children. She's probably stressed out with the in-laws. She is probably worried about a specific scenario. All of these factors need to be taken into account.
Is a prenup, nuptial agreement, permissible in the Hanafi school?
So, how does this agreement work? How does this agreement work?
Does anyone know how a prenup works? I think normally, for example, when a man and a woman get married, one example is when a man and woman get married, the man can make an agreement that if you ask for a divorce,
all that property and stuff that's in my name, you can't have it. Prenup, that you agree if we divorce, all that I have is mine. So if she goes to the court, English court, and she asks for a divorce,
that would be permitted.
if the husband permits his wife to wear, no. What is the best way to bring up children in regards to UK school education and Islamic studies in the UK?
So raising children is a different issue. Remember, the parents have the obligation to teach their children Quran and reading and writing, these type of skills. So if people are sending their children to schools, remember your children are spending most of their day in school, where schools which are designed for consumer societies, these schools are designed to make people work in corporations and the institutions of the corporate state. So the type of education that will be given to them is from a specific value. It's not from a holistic Islamic value. So homeschooling and private tuition is something people must consider.
4 questions left. Should a man be helping out in terms of feeding the baby, changing the nappies, etc., because she also works and then the responsibility should be shared?
Look, without the woman working, the man should take those responsibilities. So, firstly, the woman should not be working. She should be a full-time mother in a scenario that we would say in a utopian society. But if she is working, the father should take those responsibilities in the first place. What do I mean by this? After the woman gives birth, when she gives birth, she may be tired. So the child cries at night, the father must take the responsibility of bottle feeding the child, of changing the nappy, of potty training the children. All of these things are a shared responsibility. You cannot place it on one parent. But these are the benefits of extended families also. Because what happens in extended families, mother-in-laws do take that responsibility also. The extended family also takes that responsibility. So in societies like in London and Greater London, there are Muslim families where both couples work and they need 2 incomes. But in some places, you do not require 2 incomes. You need 1 income. So the woman should have the ease of staying home. Even if she stays home, the man still must maintain some responsibility of the upkeep of the children and the raising of the children.
A married couple, both British born, educated, living with the man's parents,
It's very, or mother-in-law again, doesn't matter. How can a Muslim woman who actively tries to practice the deen, can she navigate the challenges of materialistic society where men are increasingly becoming succumbed to temptations the system is providing them, making them particularly oblivious to their duties at times, while facing an indifferent state that doesn't take the responsibility of women who have a very weak support system otherwise?
I believe the women in the UK do not have a weak support system, but the men should take the following responsibility. As I mentioned, doing house chores and DIY, every young man should at least know how to have the boiler fixed, how to, if the electricity goes out, how to have the electricity fixed, how to have housework done, meaning when they need housework done, repairs, there are many young men who are unable to do this. So similarly, they should be able to provide. And thirdly, they must show mercy, immense mercy towards their spouse and the children. These are requirements that are essential upon young men to learn. So when women look for a spouse, they must look for these 3 qualities within the man.